Well, here's another question from Quora. What happens if I have a trademark without registering? I'm Andrei Mincov, the founder of Trademark Factory, and here's my answer to this question. Well, really, this depends on which country you're talking about. For most countries, if you have a trademark without registering, then you actually don't have a trademark, because most countries do not recognize unregistered trademarks. They don't recognize trademarks that you haven't bothered to apply for and that you haven't bothered to try to get registered. There's just not such a thing. They only recognize those trademarks that have been filed for, approved, allowed, and registered. For some countries that do recognize unregistered trademarks, it's common law countries like US, Canada, UK, Australia. There is some limited protection to unregistered trademarks. So what happens if you have a trademark there? Well, it means that if somebody steals your brand, you may be able to enforce it. You may be able to win in court, but it would probably cost you 10 to 50 times more winning that case, because you would have to prove everything. You would have to prove that you own this brand. You would have to prove that it's your trademark. You would have to prove that you are known to a significant number of people in the same geographical region as the defendant is now using your brand. You would have to prove that you were there first. You would have to prove that their activity is damaging to your brand, and all of that is very difficult to prove. And even if it's not really difficult, then it's certainly very expensive, because you have to show all sorts of expert reports, you have to have witnesses, you have to have all sorts of documentation about how much money you've invested in advertising your brand, as to how many people know about you, and how they associate your brand with your product and service. It's a difficult thing to do. It's much easier to just bring one piece of paper to the courtroom, the certificate of registration, show it to the judge and say, here, this proves that we own the brand. Now let the other side prove that we don't. This is why it's usually so easy to win a trademark infringement lawsuit if you have a registered trademark, because the other side knows that unless they have really good evidence that you should not have been granted that trademark, usually they won't allow this dispute to see the light of a courtroom, because they will say, there's no chance in hell we're going to win this, so let's find a way to settle and get this over with. So what happens if you have a trademark without registering? Well, nobody's going to take your brand seriously, that's for sure. People are going to ignore your letters if you write to them about you feeling bad about them stealing your brand, because they will look at the trademarks office system and say, this person didn't bother to spend just a little bit of money getting that brand registered. They're probably not going to spend a lot more money trying to take us to court over it. And really, this just sends the message to the world. It sends a message to your customers, sends a message to your potential investors, sends a message to your competitors that you're not serious about your brand, right? So it's, what message do you send people when you put a TM next to it? It sends the message that, you want to have this brand, that you kind of care about it, but not enough to protect it. So it's basically open season on your brand now, baby, right? So if you care about your brand, if you want to own your brand, you got to register your brand. That's what trademarks are invented for. That's the only reason we have trademark laws, because there's no other way to really claim ownership of your brand other than by registering it as a trademark. Now, I hope this answers your question, and if it does, great. Make sure you subscribe now. If it doesn't answer your question, or if you have a different question for me, make sure you comment below and I'll answer that question in a new video. And until then, I will see you in the next video.